You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to dig into the election even more with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Brian King and State Auditor John Dougal. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right, let's start with the 4th District. As of recording, this one was getting really tight. McAdams holding on to about a 1% lead. As we're coming down the stretch over the next few weeks, Brian, what are you looking for? What are the most important key factors here?
Well, I think it depends on where the votes are coming from. You know, if you have the votes coming in from Utah County as opposed to Salt Lake County, that's obviously going to favor Burgess Owens. But if the votes are coming from Salt Lake County, I think that Ben McAdams is going to be in pretty good shape. The last edition of votes we saw right immediately before taping, that gap narrowed quite a bit. So you wonder if that didn't come from Utah County. But most of the votes in CD4 are Salt Lake County votes. I think that Ben McAdams will hopefully eke it out.
John, what are you looking for? What is going to be the key here as we certify the results?
Brian's absolutely correct. It's Utah County versus Salt Lake County, but Salt Lake County had a great night last night. And so right now, while Burgess is closing the gap, you know, I think the numbers are looking in favor of Ben, but as always, it looks like it's going to be a very close race.
Yeah, as of time of recording, there were still some 200,000 ballots in Salt Lake County. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's go to the State House. Brian, you have to feel good about potentially flipping some seats, 3 of them in particular, where the Republican incumbent is down.
Yeah, and there's some longtime incumbents too. Jim Dunnigan in HD 38, who has been in the legislature for many years. Eric Hutchings in HD 39, also been in the legislature for many years in the House, and then Steve Ellison out in 45. Had great candidates in every one of those 3 races, and they ran hard races, worked very hard, and they're up right now, and I think they're up by enough that it's much more likely than not that when the final count comes in, we're going to have those things flip and stay flipped. So we're happy about that. We wish we'd picked up some more seats, obviously. We wish we'd done better up in Weber County and some at Wasatch County, but we'll take what we can get under these circumstances.
And John, as a Republican, what do you make of Democrats chipping away and flipping seats in Salt Lake County?
Well, I think the Republicans did great around the state and held or picked up, if you will, some seats around there. But Salt Lake County was difficult. As I look at the numbers, the Democrats did about 5% better than they did last presidential election. And unfortunately in Salt Lake County, President Trump was not an asset. While he's an asset, especially in places like Washington County, in Salt Lake County it was difficult for the Republicans, and the Democrats had a great showing last night.
Brian, this is 2 straight strong showings when you go back to 2018 for Democrats in Salt Lake County. It has not been good for Republicans.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's also true that you see certain portions of Salt Lake County turning more purple and more blue. The east side of Salt Lake County, I think, is becoming more and more solidly blue, or at the very least purple. You're seeing blue and purple tendencies move south along the west side as well. So, you know, we'll see. These things move in trends, and who knows how long this will last, but we like to think as Democrats that we reflect Utah values and priorities. We're working hard to represent well people in the state of Utah, and it's resonating in Salt Lake County in a way that we're happy with.
It is
well,
interesting.
And I think, Brian, to be honest, you guys are representing, if you will, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County values, and that's why you suffer around the state.
It is interesting to note, though, that back in 2018, we took a look at the strong Democratic turnout, and we thought, well, those ballot initiatives were driving it. We didn't have those this time, and in Salt Lake County, it appears like we saw another strong Democratic turnout. John.
Yeah, there was a strong Democratic turnout, and like I said, Trump was the referendum, and he did not have coattails to pull folks along in Salt Lake County, like Joe Biden. Joe Biden had long coattails in Salt Lake County, and they did well.
Brian, what about what John just said, where you're making grounds here in Salt Lake County, but not the rest of the state?
Well, I think we are making progress in the rest of the state. I think that what we have to do as Democrats, obviously though, is we have to we have to provide a concrete good reason for people in other parts of the state to believe that Democrats represent their values and their priorities. And we will work on doing that. I think that until and unless we do that, you're not going to see huge pickups. I mean, there's only so much ground you can gain in the Utah State Legislature representing Salt Lake County. It's about 40% of the population of the state. You have to, if you're going to be a successful minority party moving toward majority, you have to figure out a way to successfully reach people outside Salt Lake County.
We also saw Democratic incumbents do very well in potentially swing districts. One would be in House District 32, where Representative Suzanne Harrison has a big lead. Senate District 8, same thing for Senator Reby. What do you make of those two situations? It was just a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, that Harrison lost by a handful of votes to then incumbent LeVar Christensen. And then, of course, 2018 was a close one as well.
Right. Back in 2016, when Suzanne Harrison lost by 3 votes, I was working closely with her to try and get her elected, and I had a good friend who is a very hardcore party partisan say to me, Brian, have you told Suzanne that there's no way she's going to win? You better tell her that she's going to lose, and badly, because the party registration differential in that district is just too great. I said, listen, Suzanne may lose, but she's running a great race, and she's an example of the kind of candidate that I think Democrats need to field in these areas of the state that right now have problems electing Democrats. She's smart, she's charismatic, she works hard to connect to the values of the people in her district, and she represents them very well because she is listening and she cares about what they have to say. She responds to their needs. So if Democrats do that, if Republicans do that, they're going to win. It really doesn't matter so much what party label is. What matters most is how hard you work and how clearly you demonstrate you're going to represent your district well.
John, your thoughts on those two specific races?
Well, this is where you have Dr. Zender, former state senator, who's a fantastic candidate. But, you know, Senator Reby is also a great candidate out there from the Democratic perspective. And so they went head to head, and Senator Reby came out on top this time. And you look down, you know, it was a tight race back in the day between LeVar Christensen and Suzanne Harrison. But Suzanne is a very capable state representative, a very strong candidate, and it makes it hard, especially on a night where the Democrats were so strong in Salt Lake County. You place them in other places and you get a very different outcome.
Yeah, that Senate District 8 is an interesting one because, as you pointed out, Senator Zender was picked to replace Senator Shiwazawa, who went out to take a post with HHS. So the Salt Lake County GOP picked him for the time up until the 2018 election. That's when Senator Reby came in, and then they had to run again in 2020. So that was kind of an unusual one there. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let's get into the national trends. Really not the big wave one way or another that we were expecting, or two waves kind of canceling each other out. Brian, your thoughts on what we saw across the country?
Right. Well, I thought it was fascinating. And I do think that there was a lot of disappointed Democrats across the country. I was disappointed that we didn't have more of a wave, a blue wave, both in Utah and across the country. But I think what you had is two very highly energized groups of people. The Republicans were highly energized by President Trump and by the issues surrounding things like law and order and concerns about civil unrest and about concerns about the economy. You had, on the other hand, Democrats who were energized by the personality and the character of Donald Trump. And then you had also concerns about COVID and public health and public safety in that connection. So you had I think what you ended up characterizing it as, Glenn, as two big waves is accurate, that basically they kind of canceled each other out. You have to recognize there were waves, though, because we had record number of turnout and voters across the country, including in Utah.
John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, we absolutely had record turnout. We had folks that were strong for President Trump. We had folks that were strong for former Vice President Joe Biden. I think those two waves collided. Clearly, Biden had a good night, not as well as I think he hoped. Trump exceeded expectations for a lot of folks. I mean, polling had him struggling across the nation, and he's, you know, we still have kind of neck and neck race right now waiting for various states to be called.
Let's talk about that polling, because this will be two general elections in a row where it's been way off. Do we need to start having an honest conversation about polling and its impact in elections, Brian?
You know, I think that that's going to be something that we hear a lot about in coming months and years even, because the polling was way off for the second general election, presidential election in a row. It's hard to know. I mean, are we having a problem contacting the people who are eventually coming out and voting? Are we not asking the right questions? Are we having people who are knowingly misleading the pollsters in terms of not giving honest responses? Or are we just having people who change their mind? I don't think the latter is likely. I don't really think that people are any more likely or willing or inclined to mislead than they have been. I just don't know that we're reaching the right people, the people who end up coming out and voting.
Okay.
And I
think pollsters.
I have 30 seconds left. We saw one poll that had Biden up like 17 points in Wisconsin. That was neck and neck. clear problem there.
Oh, there's clearly a problem. I mean, it's hard to reach folks. Folks, you know, they get called, hey, do you want to answer 45 questions? It's like nobody wants to take 45 questions on a phone call. And some folks are embarrassed to say who they're backing, whether it's on one side or the other.
All right,
and so
gentlemen.
polling is problematic.
Great conversation. Unfortunately, we have to end it there. Appreciate you being with us.